Yeah.
Well, welcome. This is an opportunity to get together with Stephen Karakashian, and just wonderful opportunity with this exhibition of tapestries that we have here at the Art Reach Gallery. And so welcome.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's a real pleasure to have this show.
For us as well. And well, you're very interesting that you got kind of introduced to tapestry somewhere along the way in your life, and tell me about that. What's that?
Sure. Well, I have a history where sometimes the most important decisions that I make just drop on me out of nowhere. So this is a little bit like that. But I was living in New York. I lived in New York for a really long time. This is New York City. And so about 35 years ago, I was living in New York, and I just decided that I had never seen our country's northwest, the dry country in Arizona and New Mexico. And so I decided I was going to take a summer vacation there. And I went to visit the Navajo reservation.
Oh.
And while I was, there are many stores that have all these beautiful handcrafted things that the Navajos do. And I spent hours in these stores, and I found myself looking at Navajo blankets and weavings of all kinds and just thinking they were gorgeous. And when I came back to New York after that, I thought, I want to learn how to do that. So I did no thing about weaving, nor had I ever thought that I was going to be a weaver. But I did what I often do. I went online. There was online even that long ago. I went online and I ordered myself a floor loom that was about 5 feet wide, set it up in my apartment, and then found a place in New York to learn to weave.
Now, this loom is a vertical.
No, this loom was not.
It was a horizontal.
This loom was a horizontal loom.
Uh-huh.
I weave now in a vertical loom, but this loom was a horizontal loom. But it was ideal for making rugs, and of course that's what the Navajos specialize in.
Sure.
Now, I didn't actually imagine I was going to be making knockoff Navajo rugs, but I did think I was going to be making rugs. I liked the idea of making rugs. There was something about the texture, they're thick, and you could walk on them and you feel them under your feet, and all of that tactile quality appealed to me. Mm-hmm. So I found a place in New York to take a class in weaving. At this point in my life, I don't even remember where it was, but I was there.
You've forgotten.
Yes, I've forgotten where it was, but I was there for about 6 or 8 weeks, and I guess I absorbed a lot of it. And then I just struck out on my own. I never found a teacher. I just read books and started weaving.
So in the books that you read about the process of making the rug.
Right.
So that there were the tapestry, so that this became a part of you.
Yeah, I didn't think of them as tapestries, although in fact, Navajo rugs mostly are tapestries.
Yeah.
But the word tapestry wasn't kind of in my head at the time. I was just enamored with the idea of these beautiful rugs that were geometric shapes in them, which I'm drawn to. The Navajo ones sometimes are just black and are natural colors of the wool, but often too they use dyes, and so some of them are very brightly colored, and I like that. Mm-hmm. So I just started weaving rugs, and I loved it, and I made quite a few. I gave them to friends for presents.
All right. Now these are small rugs.
These are, they're like, I don't know, 5 feet by 3 feet or something. But I have in my bedroom to this day a rug that I wove then. It's a runner. It is almost 3 feet wide, and it is 12 feet long. And I can't imagine how I did it, but I did it.
One after the other. Well, it always strikes me that weaving and tapestry themselves, both, you wind up doing such similar repeated patterns of movement There's got to be something going on when you're doing that, the process.
Right.
What attracts you to that, or what happens when you're doing it?
Well, as I've said, it's a kind of meditative process, and the repetition is, as you point out, is when you meditation almost always involves some repetitive element. In Zen, I'm a Zen student also. In Zen, the traditional way to start out in Zen meditation is following your breath, which is certainly repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is to clear out all the extraneous stuff in your mind, and it's most easy to do that if you focus on one thing. So the repetitive quality of weaving has that same ability, and people who are tapestry weavers particularly talk about being lost in the weave.
In the weave.
In the weave.
Well, that has a double meaning, because it's lost in the weave, which is the action, but it's also lost in the weave of the made product, right?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by lost in the product.
Well, at the very end, you've got a woven product, and we talk about the weave as an object.
Right.
It's woven together,
right.
And there's kind of getting into the object that you see, which is also getting into the weave.
Yes, right, exactly. Yes, when I'm weaving, for example, one of these tapestries, which has the image has real meaning. It's about a refugee who's fleeing. So I'm simultaneously experiencing the just repetitive quality that you're talking about, but I'm also holding in my mind, in the back of my mind, that the image of these people.
Yeah.
And they become part of the experience, and there's a way in which I'm weaving it for them.
Yeah.
And that's
So that holds and is repeated within you.
Right.
Make your hands look like you're doing this.
Well, you have a bobbin, which is kind of a spindle-shaped thing that comes to a fine point. You have the yarn wound around a part of the bobbin at the back, and then the front part of the bobbin is smooth wood, and that is easy to slide up and down, over, under. You have work threads that come down that are very tight on the loom. This is now a vertical loom, which is what these were done on. So you have work threads that are coming down that are very tight, and then you have the weft that you work with the bobbin. You work over, under, and then you pack it down so that it makes a solid image. The work threads are quite close together in most of these. Probably in this one, where it's a little lighter color. If you stood here, I don't think the video will probably pick it up, but if you stand here and look from the edge, you can actually see the striping in the solid color, and those are the individual work threads that have been covered by the orange weft.
Well, what strikes me as you describe that, you push this down once, but my realization is actually that's the repeated element. There is a pushing down, there is a pulling through, and so this repeated pattern is really very complex too.
It's very relaxing.
Yeah.
Although you get into it's not all relaxing, because when you get into an area like these little figures here, those are not easy to just weave.
Be particular.
Yeah. And if you're not careful, you do the tapestry equivalent of painting yourself into a corner. And when that happens, you may have to take out an hour's worth of weave to correct your mistake.
My sense that in order for you to get to this point from where you were when you first saw those Navajo rugs, there's been a big process, and it has to be that you've also connected with other weavings and tapestries that have very much influenced you in some respect. What have you looked at in terms of masterwork or fine labor that's been done?
Less than you might imagine, but first of all, Navajo rugs themselves, although at the time I didn't think of it much this way, but they are in fact almost all of them tapestries.
Mhm.
Now they're thick
Right.
tapestries made for walking on, so that's part of the reason we don't so much we think of tapestries as the
Right.
things you hang on the wall. But the actual weaving process is tapestry, is like a tapestry. So, and I was very much influenced by that.
Right.
But then when I came to Portland, so I wrote for quite a while in New York, and then life descended on me in other ways, and I didn't have time to weave, and I eventually sold my loom and stopped weaving altogether. So there was a hiatus of about 20, 25 years, so when I didn't weave at all. And during which, the last part of that time, I came back to Portland. I lived here in the 60s, but I came back in the beginning of the 20s, 2000s.
Oh, good.
Yes. Both my children were born here in the 60s. Yeah. So when I came back, I was busy still with other things. And then at a certain point, I decided I wanted to go back to weaving. And I found a weaving studio here in Portland called Ruthie's Weaving Studio. Now, they don't specialize particularly in tapestries, but they do weave a lot of rugs. And I wove some pretty snazzy rugs there, which I was quite happy about, and got back into feeling like a weaver again.
And was that working with somebody to kind of encourage you?
There's a whole, yes, but actually everybody there is really very skilled weaver. So the person weaving next to you was probably a perfectly good teacher. So, yeah, we all kind of help each other. It's that kind of place.
Oh, yeah.
It's a collective. It's like a collective.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then when I finally decided that I wanted to really weave tapestries, and that came about because I had this image that was on my mother's coat, and it's that tapestry over there, which I think that would show in the video. But my mother had a silk coat with an image of a frieze from an Egyptian tombs painted on a piece of silk around the bottom of the coat. And the coat was so beautiful that I gave it, and the museum was happy to take it. It's in the Museum of International Folk Art in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I had that on my wall, not the whole coat, but I'd taken off the strip. And I thought to myself, I'm going to miss this.
Yeah.
So I decided, well, the solution to that
Make a duplicate.
is to make a duplicate, and I made the duplicate as a tapestry, which was the first tapestry I wove, which was harder than the devil to do because it's very intricate. So then I had to find a tapestry teacher. So I Googled tapestry, Portland, Oregon.
There you go.
And I came upon the name of Pam Patry, who lives a 15-minute drive from my house.
Oh, wonderful.
And has produced tapestries, commissions all over the country, and quite a few here in Portland and through the Pacific Northwest. She has a magnificent tapestry down at the at Mount Angel Abbey in Willamette Valley. Yeah, it's a tapestry of Jacob's ladder where he's lying asleep on the ground and the angels are coming down from heaven.
And it sounds like a song we ought to be singing.
We
are climbing Jacob's ladder.
There we go. That's right. Exactly. Anyway, it's a very large tapestry. I don't remember the exact dimensions, but it's at least 6 feet wide by 8 or 10
Is
feet.
it in your worship area? Or?
It was in the cloistered area where only the monks taught for years. But they have recently brought it out into the public space. So it's so large, they had to find a place to hang it that was high enough. And it's hanging in a stairwell now, which is a well-used stairwell, so a lot of people see it. It's beautiful.
So you worked with her as a kind of mentor, and she gave you some suggestions along the way.
Yeah, she whipped me into shape.
There you go. After that 25 years of fooling around and neglecting your craft.
Exactly. She
Yeah.
whipped me into shape. I owe everything I know about Tapestry to her.
Yeah.
And I was a good student, she'd say, I think. And,
Yeah.
But so then I did do this Egyptian frieze.
Yeah.
And it came out really well. It took me a year and a half to do.
Uh-huh.
And then I decided I was going to start making images of my cousins, inspired by my cousins' paintings.
So this series you call Landscape of the Mind, and I find that topic, that kind of idea, really to be very interesting. But you did these based on something that you'd seen as a painting by your cousin?
Yes.
And
Yes. My cousin, she's my first cousin. She her mother and my father were twins, and they are Armenians, and they were living in Palestine. Or actually, sorry, they were living in Turkey at the time of the Turkish genocide. And they were child survivors of the genocide. And so they lived these being refugees and in refugee camps and so on. And then Lucy has painted the images. They're not taken directly from their experience, but they're inspired by their experience of being refugees as children. And so I decided that I wanted to, because they were part of my family history, and because I love my cousin, it's a sense of connection with the family as a whole and their history, and it's a connection with my cousin.
So this carries forth that whole memory of you that's in your blood and your mind. Is that the landscape of the mind?
Yes, and because they're not historically taken from any particular scene, I thought they're representative of a state of mind.
Right.
And I'm a trained psychotherapist, among other things, so I'm used to thinking of states of mind. And so this one I call flight, and that is a state of mind of people who don't know where they're going, but they better get there fast because there's something. It's a dangerous situation.
Right. And sometimes they come to an impasse.
Yeah, but sometimes they come to an impasse with nowhere to go, and they're looking at an abyss and don't know what's going to happen.
And that is obviously part of the landscape of the mind, because we do that as well.
Right, exactly.
So you have really lifted these out of a particular and made them a kind of universal.
Yes, that was exactly my intention.
Yeah. So that even though I'm not Armenian, I haven't gone through that kind of struggle and effort, nevertheless I might see something of an impasse that I experienced.
Of course, yes. Because I was brought up in the United States, I came here when I was a year old. So I had no memory of the Middle East, and really, truthfully, I have very little ethnic sense of identity as an Armenian, although my last name is Armenian. My mother was not Armenian, she was American. But Lucy grew up there, and so she has all kinds of cultural associations and so on with it. So we differ in that way. And it's understandable that when I painted these images, I didn't think of them as reminding me of any particular place. I thought it was easy for me to experience them as landscapes of the mind.
Yeah.
Nobody's mind in particular, in a particular place, but people who are fleeing, people who
This is terrific, and I find in being able to repeatedly return to this space we're in the gallery, that it reminds me, and I start my own projections of the impasses that I've experienced, and probably will in the future as well.
Sure.
Hey, thank you very much for sharing this and sharing something of this journey for you in learning, discovering, and creating such wonderful images for us to share at the gallery today. really through the month into the end of October. We're already there. So thank you very much.
Well,
Stephen.
thank you, Sheldon in particular, and also thanks to the church. This is a wonderful place to show work, and I feel very grateful and appreciative, so thank you.
So it's your opportunity next to come to the gallery, the Art Reach Gallery, and have your own personal experience with this work. Thank you very much.